Recording in progress. Okay. It's going to be a great time.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Does that sound interesting and cool?
To go. Damn, I look so good.
Let's just wing it. You ready?
Cool.
4 hours later.
Yeah. Dear Tech.
That made me tired.
Oh, laughing hurts. Cut. Today, we are talking about ping pong, free lunch, and nap rooms. What do the people want?
So let's start with yeah, I'd love some ping pong. But no, have you had any of these before in a company you worked at?
Yes, I've had all of them. I will say my first introduction to like quintessential, I feel like workplace perks, and we'll define them in a bit just so everyone's speaking the same language. But workplace perks was at the staffing agency I worked at. And they had a ping pong table in the office. And prior to that, I had been at a small company, pretty corporate, but none of that. And so I was like walking and I was like, what the fuck? Like there's ping pong here? Like, is it just for show? Are people actually using it? But no, not everyone, a lot of people used it. There were some very avid ping pongers in that office. And then I would say that was like the first introduction. And then honestly, every media and tech company I've worked at since then have all had varying levels of perks as well. So yes, I have. What about you?
Yeah, so the last agency I worked at, the team started off at like a shared space, and then we got our own space, and they got a ping pong table. And it was kind of new to all of us. None of us had worked at a company with a ping pong table. So we literally started like getting competitive and like practicing and playing ping pong. And then we, of course, like on Fridays, we'd have like beer. So we started playing beer pong in the office, which was great.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was great. I mean, I don't know if that helped or hurt the culture, but something we did. But prior to that, none of it. Have you worked at a company with nap rooms? I feel like that's to me, that's cool because I like to nap at my desk.
So I'm not going to go. This will be a story for another podcast episode, but
Okay.
I went through a promotional initiation experience at a former place of employment where it involved a lot of alcohol. And I this is a long story, but I created a nap room the next day at work out of necessity. But outside of that,
Okay. I don't know if that's a company
um,
perk though, Fran. I think that you made that for perk yourself.
yeah. Yeah. That's a story for another day. But anyways, I don't think I've ever had nap rooms. I want to say there were meditation pods, I believe, but I don't believe there's been a nap room.
That's so zen, and I would definitely only use that for napping. But that's cool. Um, but yeah. So okay. So do you want to
Let's
define?
define
Yeah.
what we're talking about. Yeah. So when we talk about, I feel like ping pong's like the quintessential kind of term that people use when they start talking about perks, but what do you mean when we talk about workplace perks? And then maybe like the separation between perks and benefits.
Yeah. So I think, a perk I mean, that's exactly what it is, right? It's something that's not industry standard, something that's not, like a salary and a bonus and healthcare and stuff like that. That's not a perk. That's something that almost every company offers. It's something that's basically expected by the industry. I think a perk, when we try to define it, especially here, is something extra, something more than. And I think an example of a perk that became a benefit maybe is like unlimited PTO. Like 10 years ago, that was a perk. It was like, what? Unlimited PTO? That's wild. Today, I mean, not having it isn't maybe a deal breaker, but having it, it's like, okay, like it's not that big of a deal. So I think that's how I would define a perk.
Okay. Yeah. I honestly think I'm the same. It's like it's like an added bonus. I think in terms of like company benefits in the media and tech space, like the basics will come down to compensation package, which depending on which skill set you're in, oftentimes can include base salary, equity if the company offers it, a sign-on bonus if it's offered, um, medical benefits, eyes, dental. Am I missing anything?
401k, 401k, and
401k,
annual bonus.
an annual bonus. Yeah. I feel like those are all like pretty standard, and depending on like the scale of the company, I think they'll vary a little bit. And like some of those items in the total comp package will vary a little bit, especially if it's like maybe a startup versus like a Fortune 500 company, for example. And then like perks, I would say, just as you said, like anything extra outside of that, I think there have been a lot of, in my head, I would still say I feel like there have been a lot of standardized perks. Um, so for example, like you said, like unlimited PTO is becoming more consistent across the industry. Food on site, the office in some form or fashion, whether it's free or whether you have to pay for it. At the very least, like snacks, I feel like are becoming like pretty frequent and consistent across companies. Rideshare services, I feel like have, especially in like the larger cities, I feel like ride sharing services have become pretty popular. Um, what else? Any other like consistent ones you've seen out there? Oh, education benefits. I would also add, as well as like increased mat and pat leave. What
And I
else have
think
you seen?
all these are like determined by like the size of your company. Like I think
Yeah.
when we look at something, and kind of like or even within, we said 401k is like a benefit, but some companies where it's like, oh, like you get X%, and the percentage can be
Yeah.
almost a perk if it's, because some companies, like, we don't have any match. So I think those things, I think, yeah, ride share, or like and again, depending on the size of the company, maybe just some sort of a stipend for travel, like if you're going
Mm-hmm.
into the office. Some companies do like phones, like, or
Mm-hmm.
for recruiting, I know almost any company will give you some sort of a phone stipend.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, so as long as it's not industry standard, I think for this today's conversation, we'll talk about it as a perk. Even if it's becoming wider, I think we'll make that separation between what is expected for anyone doing the job, and then what does it make it like, oh, this is what our company offers that's special.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which influences if a candidate, some perks might make a candidate choose a company over another. I doubt ping pong is the perk. But
Who knows?
like,
Who knows?
yeah, yeah,
Zero
I mean,
judgment.
or back in the day, or they still, I mean, they do it now, but I think it's nothing wild. But it's like when beer was on tap at startups, it's like, oh my god,
Mm.
beer on tap, that's amazing. At 3 o'clock every day we can drink.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a thing anymore, especially with remote work. I mean, I think, you can have beer whenever you want. I mean, not that we should be drinking on the job, but when you're at home.
Oh boy. And let's move past that one. Free food for me, honestly, is a very strong incentive. I remember when I was at my last company, pre-pandemic, they had a full-blown cafeteria, and it was like some nice ass food. And there was breakfast and lunch completely free. There was like a hot meal bar, like eggs, meat, proteins, potatoes, omelets, and they had like a cereal bar, a full like fruit bar. And then lunch, there was always like 4 or 5 different stations. And it was like some pretty darn good food. And in LA, that's like saving me bare minimum $40 a day. Um, so honestly, for me, free food, pretty good perk.
Did they do dinner too?
I don't think so. I'm trying to
Because
remember. I
there was
never
a
stayed that late.
there was a
I
there
don't
was a
think they
link. No,
did
I was
though.
gonna say, so there was a LinkedIn article a while ago that it was like, that's how the companies get you. They get
Mm-hmm.
you in the door because they'll do breakfast from like 7 to 9 or 7 to 9:30. So they get you in the door before 9, right? They keep you for lunch, obviously, and then dinner is served at, let's say, 6:45, and your job day ends at 5. Well, you just worked an extra hour and 45 minutes, or you know what I mean. So
Mm-hmm.
that was one, again, I appreciate food. I love food, right? And I definitely, I would say for companies right now that like, oh, we want to get people back in the office, free food is a decent motivator.
Mm-hmm.
Because some companies did it, some companies didn't really do it, but that's how, for some people, it's like that's how they get you to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
which, I mean, it's valid either way. It's an investment the company's making, right?
for
So
sure. I think I don't even remember historically, and I'm kind of going down a tangent here, but historically, how I'm curious if this was like led by the tech industry, especially if you're talking about like um, Silicon Valley, Silicon Beach, of how companies evolved into the kind of like campus model
Mhm.
where it's like it's literally was like created into your second home. Like there are, like we're talking about all these perks, like you go there to work, but then obviously you're incentivized to come in earlier for free breakfast. There is like parks and walk spaces outside. There's game rooms, there's snacks, there's lunch. So like this whole campus setting, it's almost like a dorm room situation where it's creating an environment to keep people there longer. So it's interesting. I wonder, I'd be curious to know like the history of like how kind of like campus model um came about, but maybe we can talk about that another day.
Yeah, no, because I remember, with at least the Apple campus, Steve Jobs like helped design it. And
Mm,
because I read it in his book where he had a vision for it, and that's definitely something we can go into. But I think with the campus model, like those benefits and like making sure like it look, you have a lot of kids coming out of master's programs or college going straight into the tech world, going to these campuses, and they're used to that kind of an environment, and they're
mm,
when you're 23 years old, you know working x amount of hours. I'm not saying, again, your choice of how you live is up to you, but if someone enjoys it, wants to just stay in campus and just work, a company accommodating that only makes their own product better, or their own work staff feel better, right? Don't make it mandatory, but if you allow them to be there and all their needs are taken care of. I remember back in the day when Google was like revolutionary for having like masseuses in the
mm-hmm,
office, and they have someone come in and make sure your desk was ergonomic. That
mm-hmm,
those investments, I mean, I genuinely think, at least in the beginning, paid off, because one, the best talent was working in, one of your engineers was worth maybe two or three of a random engineer walking by in the area. So you had the best working staff. Yes, they were pouring a lot of money into it, but I think they got, if we look at Google's track record, they got a decent ROI.
mm-hmm,
But I think that actually pulls us into the next thought process of, you know, the benefits versus the perks. Like, how do you balance that out? Right.
mm-hmm,
Like, we'll see companies out there that may not have as many perks, but they pay a ton of money.
mm-hmm,
Right. Or if you can't pay, and that's something that I was going to say, right, to you, Fran, like companies that can't pay, like what do you think they could do with their perks, right? Should it
mm-hmm.
reflect, or should they just be like, we just can't?
Yeah. So we did a poll on LinkedIn, and I know both of us have read a bunch of studies on this as well. But at the end of the day, in terms of like how candidates prioritize factors in making a job decision, compensation is number one. I think that's pretty par for the course and understandable. Um, but 100, obviously in this market, like there are companies at like completely different scales in our industry who aren't going to be able to compete financially. So then it's like, how do we get creative? How do we build our brand? How do we attract and retain talent when we can't compete just based on financials? So then I think people have gotten creative with having stock or ownership in the company, a really strong culture, a development program and training program for employees to help them gain skills on the job. Like you see so many creative things that have worked for companies, and they've like Apple started in a garage at some point. Like everyone starts small at some point. Um, so it's like, how did they get there? How did they differentiate themselves? How did they brand themselves? It's like obviously we all as candidates and job seekers, like we all have different lives and different factors that we prioritize in reviewing and accepting a new job. So for one person, like having the option to work completely remote when they are a full-time caretaker and have two kids is going to be like, that person honestly might take a little bit of a pay cut to have that option for a new job. Where, say, if someone else is um has 8 kids and finances are extremely important to them to make sure they can support their kids and their family, so they may take a job that's a little bit farther of a commute, but pays significantly more, not with today's gas prices, but maybe like 2 years ago. Um, so it's like the factors that come into play for a candidate are going to completely fluctuate depending on the individual. So I think, at least from like an employer perspective, it's like, one, having a very strong understanding of the market and your competition, where you stand, where you rank up based on like market analytics and industry norms, based on the talent you were trying to seek and the market you were trying to compete in. So like getting really good on like current state, and then your own like awareness around where your company lies in that space. So where do you line up? Where do you stack up? Where are your strengths? Where are you competing? Where are you falling short? And then building your brand based around that knowledge. So if I know I'm a company that is going to be a market leader in terms of compensation and finances, say Netflix, for example, like I can just throw freaking money at people and I'm going to get the best talent. Like that's going to be part of our brand, is you're going to get top dollar here, where a small startup may not be able to compete financially. So maybe they have a fully flexible work from home policy. So you can come into the office, you can fully work from home, and they build their brand around that and specifically target markets that are craving that flexibility, where whether it's like a certain generation or caretakers or what have you. So I think I would say from an employer's perspective, like those things are really important, is really understanding the market, understanding where you stack up, and then building your brand and highlighting what makes you different outside of that.
No, I love that. And it's funny though, and I think a lot based on like what you said, and something that stuck out is like, be flexible as an employer, right? Like understanding where you are, and being willing to be flexible, but also like um well, I want to go back to, because I had a train of thought that just totally left. But when you say understanding, where you stack up, and the example that you gave, that's also a big one, because and we saw it in certain companies in the industry that are technically industry leaders that may not have the best like culture reputation. Well, they increased their salary bands because they realize that, like, okay, our culture needs work, but we still need people, so we're just going to up the, which I think is a great sign that they are keeping up with the market, seeing like, well, you know what, other companies, mind you, we can all say and argue like, okay, well, they should invest in making their culture better, and we honestly, we don't know if they are or they aren't. But I think having the mindset, or having the understanding that, well, you know what, we're not competitive when it comes to culture, and that culture is something that's kind of sort of quantifiable to the fact that they know that they're not competitive in that space, so they up
Mm-hmm.
their salaries. But the other thing is, companies, I hope are being aware, because if you look at a job description, and under perks, if you see like, you get to work for this cool company, that's not a perk, right? Like, that's not, don't say working in a fast environment is a perk, right? Or learning a lot is a perk, even for entry level roles. Like, that's no longer a perk. um
Mm-hmm.
it shows that you're kind of out of touch when you're putting stuff like that on job
Mm-hmm.
sites. um or even, if you put like a 401k as a perk, I feel like that in today's day and age, that kind of shows you're a little bit out of touch, right? So yeah, but I think, like you said earlier, pay is the most important thing. So uh keeping that top of mind when you're defining perks and benefits for your roles is a big deal, because like you said, know yourself, know the market, and that's the thing. So if you know you're not competitive, be flexible enough to say, can we give more equity? Can we
Mm-hmm.
give more PTO? For a company that will not do PTO, maybe have like, because I remember there were companies that were like, we do X PTO max for every employee. Well, maybe if you aren't going to go unlimited, be like, all right, well, we can be flexible with PTO. We can negotiate on PTO. Because I remember I've tried to be like, okay, you can't give me more salary. Can you give me more PTO? They're like, no, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, what do you want me to do as a candidate, right?
Mm-hmm. I
Um,
think that candidate, like the where the power has shifted and the dynamic of hiring has evolved over the years too, and I'm sure it will continue to evolve. Um, because I think like previously, when I say previously, I'm trying to think of a timestamp I want to put on that. I think I would say like 10-ish years ago, the these perks and benefits and compensation packages um, that we're talking about, I think historically, like 10 plus years ago, that power lay with companies and organizations. I think how the market was at the time, like we'll talk about this too in a little bit, but I think it was tied to like generational norms. And then I also think the element of like supply and demand. But I think um previously the power lay with the employer. So like employees could come in and you weren't really pushing back too much. Like most people would say like, hey, can I get, not most people, but people could ask like, hey, can I get 5K more than this initial offer? And that could be a conversation, but it wasn't, I felt like not as much power lay with the employee or the potential candidate to push back and say no and have demands in terms of accepting an offer. But I think now in this day and age, like we are all, especially when you get down to like more like niche skill sets and say like engineering or cybersecurity, for example, the demand is so much higher than the supply. So the power has shifted. I think it sits more with the candidate and the employees where like we know there can be like 5 different companies that one person is interviewing with and they're all trying to seek out. So like that, the more power lies that individual because they know they have multiple offers and can have the option to choose which one works best for them.
and I think, and I haven't done any research on this, but my thought process also went to like, companies don't give pensions anymore. I think pension was like a
Mm.
big factor back in the day, and it also eliminated a lot of need for perks because like, well, we're going to pay you when you're not working for us anymore. Also, working for a company for like a decade mattered, right? Like some company, I'll
Mm-hmm.
work for this company for 40 years, and then I'll get a pension at the end. So when you looked at a company, you looked at all these other factors. So you weren't applying to a dozen. First of all, one person probably interviewed or had 3 breaks in their entire career, right? It's like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
worked for this company for 15 years and then maybe went to another company or maybe got laid off, right? Which wasn't heard of. Today, I mean, honestly, if we looked at like one person who has 12 years of experience, he probably has the interview, experience of like 4 people from back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they've done that. Or even a contractor. A contractor,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen resumes where the person's been at 15 different companies in like less than a decade because they've been
Yeah.
doing contract gigs. So I think the loss of the pension or the pension not being as prevalent these days, you know, I have nothing to lose. Where even not even just for new candidates, but let's say I'm trying to get a promotion or get a pay bump. Back in the day, it was, well, listen, don't be a troublemaker because we'll fire you and then you won't have your pension. But now it's like it's the other way around. It's, if you don't give me the pay bump, I'm going to Google. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to Meta, and then I'm the employer scared because this is a great employee, and they could go very easily, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I thought of as well.
Yeah. It was always funny to me 'cause my um dad worked for the same company his entire life. He worked there for over 50 years. And if I heard someone tell me that today, I would literally be like, what the actual hell? Like how, why, like were you growing during that time? Did you get opportunities to develop and move up and progress?
Were you held
Um
hostage? Like,
but for my dad, it was, I think a lot of it was like a pride. It was something he was super passionate. Plus, there was like very much so an emphasis on loyalty to your company and employer. I
And
think with his generation.
I mean, but like I would love to stay at a company longer term, but the issue
Oh
is
yeah.
a couple issues are is like one, we know for a fact, like based on studies, you're not going to earn as much, right? The other thing is, like you just said, growth. Like there will be a ceiling because at some point someone's not leaving for you to be able to get to the next step. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to leave the company. And if you're there 40 years, I mean, like you said, someone's stuck somewhere. You're stuck somewhere for a really long time and your career takes a hit.
Mm-hmm.
That's yeah, 50 years. That's a lot of
Yeah, it's
years for
mind
him.
boggling. It's really cool. It's freaking cool. He worked for United Airlines. And he like
Oh,
loved his job so much. So it was really cool. Like it was a great situation for him, but
did y'all
it
travel a lot?
wild.
Did y'all use
Yeah,
that discount?
we were on oh, what's it called now? Standby. Yeah, I lived like 15 years of my life on standby. It
That's
was
so cool
awesome.
though.
Like I remember when I was younger, I was like definitely disgruntled by it sometimes because we would get like kicked off of flights or sleeping in an airport or in an airport for 10 hours. Um, which I got no like looking back, I'm like, damn, like we definitely got to travel a ton because of that. So yeah,
Oh,
grateful.
that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
If I had that today, I would be definitely flying around like more than I should be.
Yeah.
Um, So, all right, wait. So you actually talked about how it's changed over time, over like last 10 years, sort of thing. Let's talk a little bit about how the pandemic changed it. What do
Mm,
you think? Because I feel like I'll speak to recruiting, and this is a very like simple thing, but like I remember I was kind of like looking for a job right before the pandemic. So this had to have been early 2019. And I was speaking to a recruiter for a recruiter, and I was like, "Well, I'd love my next job to be remote, right?" I just said it.
mm-hmm.
I didn't say it was like had to be. But I was like, and she like kind of like beat me up for it. She was like, "That's not a thing in the industry. You actually sound lazy when you say that." She said all these things to me,
Damn.
and I know like she's still she owns a recruiting company for recruiting. She's a great person. Posts a lot of inspirational stuff on LinkedIn, but she like kind of went in, and I like at the end of the call almost like had to look at myself in the mirror and be like, "Am I lazy? Like, are you a lazy person?" Like, I felt really shitty after that. Um, but fast forward 12 14 months, all the recruiting jobs were remote, right?
Mm.
And it was 2020, and COVID hit and everything's remote. And I don't want this part of it to be focused around remote work, but that's one of those things that like we realized every job that every employer said couldn't be remote because of XYZ, minus maybe 15% of the world's jobs that are physical, like cops, or maybe even some hardware people in the tech industry, right?
Medical. Yeah. Like there's
Medical
definitely jobs that require
for sure. But even my friends who were doctors, they weren't they were in their
med school.
no, right after they were what's after med school and before fellowship. I can't believe I'm forgetting this. Um,
My Grey's Anatomy brain is not helping me right now. That's my only reference point.
this is actually a little embarrassing because I can't edit this part out because it's in the
Is
middle
it
of the
like Grey's
story.
Anatomy where
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
in oh, they're in rounds. They go on rounds and
yeah.
I'm literally trying to think of Grey's
Thank
Anatomy.
God
I'm
this isn't medical face because all the doctors are getting upset.
sorry,
No,
doctors.
so it's right after internship. So internship's the first year of their
Clinicals. I'm just throwing out words. No, I can't.
um residency. Wow, the word is
Ah,
residency. I'm sorry.
I should have known
All the
that.
doctors listening, I
Sorry,
apologize.
Grace.
So they're in their residence,
Yeah.
and they were remote. They were doing telemedicine
Oh,
for
interesting.
months, right? They were
Mm.
going in from time to time, but the first, I will not forget this, for the first maybe 6 months of COVID, they're going into the hospitals very limited because the thing
Mm.
is, there were interns like, the interns died in like New York and stuff, and this was in Texas, and certain programs took things. So they were able to do telemedicine for a while, right?
Mm.
So my
Mm-hmm.
point becomes, going back to the point before we spent 15 minutes figuring out what this role was, um, that every other role that we were told for years could not be remote
Mm.
suddenly became remote. And
Mm-hmm.
then COVID is, I don't want to, it's not over, but it's wrapping up, or it's becoming more of a norm for us today.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these roles stayed remote. A lot of these companies
Mhm.
decided that we will go fully remote. So, what other one, the impact of COVID to our work and our perks and our benefits in terms of jobs? Like, what has that been?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I think the pandemic has completely altered our way of life in so many ways. But in terms of going into the workplace or being able to do your job, and then also talking about just like how it's affected workplace perks in general, um, I think it's created a great shift, like 100%. As so many companies, we had no other option but to figure out how to work remotely. I um remember when I started, when we first, I think it was March 23rd, 22nd, 23rd of last year, when I first started working from home 100%. I think in like our job function.
Wait. Last year or 2 years ago?
Oh my god, fucking hell. My
It's okay.
perception of time is so
COVID
off.
time. COVID
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah,
2 years
it's
ago.
been over 2 years. What the hell? Um, anyways, yeah, so it's like we had no other option but to adapt. Like, so many organizations, there was literally no other option. You had to figure it out. Like, companies were buying software to support the transition to remote. They were figuring out new processes, plans, schedules, like everything shifted out of necessity. And just like you said, I think we we realized, after being able to like function, and so many companies actually producing and being able to grow their business and have like major successes, it was a stark realization, like you said, that we can actually do this fully remote. Like, we don't need to be in office. um well, I do think there are um countless benefits to being in office as well. I'm like 100% a big proponent of giving people that flexibility and that opportunity to make the best decision for themselves. Like, as long as they're getting their work done, you do you. If I was creating my own culture, that would be my 2 cents. Is, if you want to come in, great. If you want to work from home, great. I probably would try and cultivate some sort of um like team off site maybe a couple times a year, just to um really focus on the interpersonal culture elements of my team, because I think so much is lost not being able to connect with people. Like, we're all human, and I think human connection face to face is also a pretty big component in terms of um people feeling connected to their workplace and their peers. And there's like the psychological element of um I may put up with a little bit more or work a little bit harder if I feel some sort of emotional, mental, like psychological tie to the people I work with. Um, so in summary, yes, 100%. I think it's greatly shifted. If we're just talking about the ability to work remotely, I think it proved to us all that yes, we can do this. Now, I think a lot of companies are reacting differently to that, as we, like you said, like the COVID pandemic becomes kind of more of our norm. And it's just kind of integrated into our day to day now. Um, it's interesting to see how companies are reacting to the perk of working remotely, and if they're requiring people to come back in, if they're leaving it open, if they're going fully remote. So my last company, they are shutting down offices, selling buildings, ending leases, and they are 100% remote. So it's wild to me. I think it's amazing, like that works for them. And then a company like ours, they're incentivizing people to come back in. A lot of individuals are still working remotely, but there are incentives to come back in. And I think we've heard a lot of call outs from a lot of major media and tech companies. A lot of articles that have come out over the last 6 months about organizations requiring individuals to come back into the office and there's been a lot of blowback from that. So it's interesting to see, if we're just talking about the perk of remote work, how the pandemic has affected it. I think a lot of those other perks have shifted too. For example, the benefit of having free food on site. A lot of companies ended that. One, cost savings, and two, the health and safety of having just food out in the open for people to touch and breathe on and eat. So I think that has shifted as well. I think health and safety has altered some of the on-site perks we'll see. We have hand sanitizer in all of our offices now. That you see it
Everywhere.
like every
It's
2 feet.
everywhere. Yeah.
There's like cleaning protocols that are happening more frequently. So I 100% think the pandemic has, I would say, depending on your viewpoint, both positively and negatively affected workplace perks. I think a lot of companies are still going through the period of adapting to what direction they want to take now, and if they want to revert back to previous culture of the perks that they had, or if they're going to change based on what we all experienced over the last 2 years. Um, what have you been thinking about in terms of, like, where do you see, if a company's doing it right, what are they doing right now in terms of employee perks?
I think so when it comes to remote, so it's really funny because I think of how I felt being an IC, being an independent contributor, and now being a manager. I think one of the things that is great is not making blanket statements.
Mm,
Saying that we are going to go fully remote no matter what, or saying everyone needs to be in the office no matter what. I think it's very narrow-minded.
Wait,
And
quick pause in there. Pin your thoughts so you don't lose it.
sure.
Quick follow-up question to that. So my only question to that would be, I feel like there needs to be consistency in terms of behavior. Like I agree with you, but the devil advocate side of me is, I feel like there needs to be consistency in policy and behavior across companies, so everyone has the same experience. But then I also understand like the need to create an equitable environment where there is that flexibility.
So I would argue, why does everyone need to have the same experience when what they're experiencing themselves in their own lives are going to be different person to person? If I have 3 kids and I need to be home at 3 o'clock so that when they come home, there's
Mm,
someone home, my experience shouldn't be the same as a 21-year-old kid who can do whatever they want, go into the office, or lives right next to the office, right? So I don't
I think I
I
used the wrong
understand.
term.
No, I think I know what you meant though. Like it should be. So here's what I'll say. It should be not necessarily quote unquote equal. It should be equitable. So it should
Yeah,
be what
I
I
think I
need.
meant like it shouldn't be the same experience. It should be the same message, I think, in terms of what they're offering.
Yeah. So I think it should be the same availability of, I don't want to use the word flexibility again, but it should be like you get what you need per
Mm-hmm.
person, right? So, and I think one of the things that's nice is, and as long as you have a management structure, a management team that is empathetic, saying that, oh, it's up to the managers what you discuss with your manager. Because now that when I look at it, look, my team is all over the United States, right? No one lives in, I live in New York, no one lives here from my team. But I would love to have team members nearby and go into the office once in a while. So I live an hour away from work. I don't particularly love traveling to go to the office, but I actually do like being in the office, right? So I would love to have maybe once a week, if I had a team nearby, to be able to go into the office with. But like you said earlier, offsites are great for that. If you can do quarterly offsites, that'd be great, because you're right. Strangers, this is, and I can't remember who said the quote, and I feel really bad. But I will look it up. But strangers can't team, right? At the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, and I think we had this conversation where it's like, Fran, like,
Oh, we were talking
we're
about that in
it was at a
what
work,
the
there was a
managers
work
thing, right?
video. There was a work
Okay.
video.
Okay. Yep.
And but the thing is, it comes down to, Fran, you and I work well together. And this was what we said earlier. It's like we work well together and you're an awesome person and we're work friends, but I don't know you outside of this little Zoom box.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think we know each other better now, but in general, at least prior or with most people on their teams, they don't know each other past the Zoom box anymore,
Mm-hmm.
which is a problem when it comes to being an actual team, being productive. So I do think when it comes to the remote piece, making blanket statements is tough. And I think if you're deciding that, hey, we want the people in our company to be type X type of person that is going to come in the office, you're making a decision to alienate a big portion of the
Mm-hmm.
workforce, and you have to be okay with that. And that's on you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you're complaining we're not getting the best talent, well, guess what? You've decided that. Or on the other side of things, if you're deciding we will not have any physical offices, you're also alienating a percentage of the workforce, or you're alienating a level of connectivity, a level of camaraderie, whatever it is, right? And you may be destined to have a team of almost actually, and I don't want to say that because I'm not going to say everyone that's a remote worker has less love for their company, but you're risking that possibility that a percentage of your team won't care as much, right?
Less connection, yeah.
So I think the people that are doing it right are people that are listening to each individual person. And obviously it's not like one person listening to everyone. It's you have a management structure in place to have conversations and say, you know what, we'll come into the office X days a week if you need to, right? Because I have some of my friends who are heads down developers. They're not a part of any of the ideation processes. They're there to code. And at least I know one of them was told you need to be in the office, and he was literally like, why? I
Mm-hmm.
just need to be told, like, because he's junior, he's a junior almost kid, and he just wants to code, but he's like, I don't need to travel 45 minutes to do that. I have my computer set up at home, and my work hasn't gotten any worse. So that's the first thing. I think the other thing is it comes down to, when you look at a lot of companies that don't have quote unquote unlimited PTO, they did unlimited sick days. I
Mm-hmm.
think in the world of COVID, that's huge because I don't think limiting how long, like I shouldn't be sick. And I've done this before at work where I had a flu, which now you think about it, you're like, oh my gosh, you were going to get everyone sick. But I had the flu at 102-degree fever and I went to work. I didn't have sick days.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild to me, right? And if a company's saying, well, if we're not giving unlimited PTO, we're giving unlimited sick days, people can take advantage of it. I'm like, if you're making decisions based on the exceptions and not the rules, you have your own issues,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because your entire company isn't going to do that. Even with unlimited PTO, Fran, how much PTO do we actually take? Right? I probably take less PTO.
I think I really embraced unlimited PTO this year.
But okay, which is honestly, but our
I
management was
didn't
telling us to
abuse
do
it,
that.
but I embraced it.
But our leadership structure told us to do that, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
please take your PTO. Especially this year, things were so slow based on
Oh, for
certain things
sure.
going on. But in general, if I look at, when I come in and I hear I have unlimited PTO, it's actually working in the inverse because I'm not counting the days that I have to take off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a whole other thing where it's like, well, if you have unlimited PTO, you don't have to pay out PTO anymore from a company
Yep,
standpoint. Good
for
for the
sure.
company.
Yeah.
But when I look at that as an employee, I don't need you to pay me out. Just let me not have to think about it before I take a day off because, my dog is feeling sick or something to that effect, right? Or it's going to sound really, really dumb and messed up. My dad got sick in 2018 in India and I had to go. My first thought was, do I have enough days? I didn't
Mm.
go. I ended up not going
Reality, yeah.
because I couldn't get a visa, which is a whole other story. But my first thought was, do I have enough days? That is a stupid thought to have
Mhm.
when you have an emergency. So I think that's another thing that a company is doing right in today's day and age, whether or not you have unlimited PTO. That's a whole other conversation that we don't need to get into right now. But if your sick days are still like, oh, you have 5 or you have 8, which is wild. So you're telling me that I can get sick once a quarter or twice a quarter and that's it, right? Like that's or even for people that, I mean, anyway, I think another thing that's doing it right, Matt and Pat leave. I think that's no longer should be a perk. I know that, countries in outside of the United States have blanket things, terms in place. We
Mhm.
don't have that, which is neither here nor there. I think as an employer, you are responsible for your employees, so you should take responsibility, right? Um, Yeah. And I think outside of that, I think again, all of these things that we're talking about, it comes down to empathy. Have conversations with your employees, see what they want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And go from there. Like if you have a team of people saying we don't want to come into the office, and you decide that you're going to make them come into the office, that is what is doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Not one or the other. It's the conversations you have, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think from everything you shared and what we've talked about so far too, I think it comes down to like fully assessing your situation, where you're at, where the market's at, and then listening to your employees, and then kind of using all of those components when with like empathy as your driver to like craft the best model you can. Well, also then they like we keep in mind like these are businesses, like they're trying to make money. That's always going to be their driver in most cases. And then we have what was it? Patagonia or REI, the owner sold off his
Patagonia.
whole portion. What was it?
Patagonia.
Patagonia sold off like his whole. I don't know. I don't remember the logistics of the articles I was reading, but like there's people like him, which is freaking wonderful. But it was like always like knowing they're there to make money. So then it's like that's always going to be the first driver. But the awareness around everything outside of that, I think, is really important.
But I also think, like, when we say that, right? If we look at all the factors of all the different factors, let's say like losing employees and the recruiting costs, right? Or the cost of having maybe not quote unquote the best employee in the seat. All these things have costs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you can narrow down into your culture, your quote unquote perks, benefits, whatever that may be, and you actually tune it up well, and you're very intentional about those things, it almost, if not giving you a some sort of a profit or a benefit, it will balance out the cost that you're putting in, because you're either not having to recruit as often, which is cost saving. Mind you, I would love to be in a world where recruiters are always in demand, but if you do it right, you don't have to be recruiting all the time or have high
Mm-hmm.
attrition. And then also, if you have really good people in seats, I'm speaking to tech because, you know, I remember asking someone about, and this may or may not be true, but I was like, why do you want to live in the Silicon Valley? And he was like, well, in their opinion, they said that the people that, this was pre-pandemic, the people that they were working with were the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, if I'm working with the best, my game's getting elevated, but also for the company, have less people doing better work
Mm-hmm.
than a group of people that are maybe B-level players or C-level players.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're, think about it this way in terms of cost, right? Dollars. If I have 5 engineers that I'm paying above market, they're doing the work of 15 engineers below market. You're still saving money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, and I keep giving the disclosures because I know the comments are going to be like saying a bunch of stuff, but that's an opinion of someone.
Mm-hmm.
You may be not in Silicon Valley and be a engineer. That's not what I'm saying right now, but that's the sentiment they were giving. So if
Mm-hmm.
if you're willing to pay a little bit more and have that level of work, it might be worth it to you because you might be saving money in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. 100%. Okay, so kind of moving, we touched on this a little bit when we were talking previously, but moving onward to the element of generations and how generational norms have affected workplace perks and benefits. Um, what are your thoughts? I feel like different generations kind of have different characteristics and different norms. So what are your thoughts on that? And how do you feel like it's effective, if at all, workplace perks?
So I think if you go back from like, you know, let's say like post World War I or like post Great Depression, you were lucky to have a job. And that's how people
Mm-hmm.
felt for a long time, right? Lucky to have a job. And then because it was like, you know, work in a factory, that was like a lot of the jobs, or like not everyone went to college, and then everyone went to college, and then you started, work at a company for 40 years, you get a pension, right? Those things made it so that we as workers didn't raise our hand and say, hey, I want this. We were like, we're good. I'm glad I have money. I'm glad I have what I have. And if you
Mhm.
weren't glad, you know, sold paper Tupperware on the side, or, your whatever it may be to supplement your income.
Mhm.
Then we get to a point where, you know, tech industry starts doing its thing. Silicon Valley happens. You have your IBMs, your Apples, your Microsofts, and they start doing their thing. And then people realize, well, if there's a Microsoft to work at, there's also an Apple to work at. And then there's some competition starting. And then, a decade or so or 2 decades later, Google comes around, right? And then it becomes all these companies start popping up, and then you have your .com boom. So every day there's a new company. And then where do you want to work ends up being the thing, right? Especially during the .com, right before the .com bust, excuse me. Um, this starts happening, and then competition starts. As this is happening, slowly but surely, the whole companies realize that they're losing a little bit of this loyalty. And I don't know if it had anything to do with it, but then companies stop doing the whole pension thing, and that
Mm.
stops being a thing. And then people stop sticking around for as long as they used to. And then because that's becoming the norm more so, and because back in the day, if you change jobs every 5 years, you were a job hopper, right? Now it's like, every year you're a job hopper. But since that starts changing, companies are like, all right, well, how do we become more competitive? How do we keep people? How do we attract the best people? So I think, even with my mom, when I'm negotiating, if I talk about negotiating a salary when I'm getting a job, I'm like, hey, listen, if they offer X, I'm not going to take the job, or I'm going to say no, I'm going to ask for more. I was like, no, 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 don't do that. Just take what they give you. Don't
Mhm.
they're going to take the offer away. I'm like, first of all, if a company takes an offer away, if I'm trying to negotiate, that's not a company I might want to work for. But on the other side of things, it's like she's so scared because back in her day, they had all the power, but now, not saying workers have all the power, because I think it's a pendulum. It goes back and forth depending on the market. We have some power, right? We understand that, you know, we are the ones with the good that we're trying
Mhm.
to quote unquote sell. So it's still supply and demand, but we understand more so now that we are the supply.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. This is an offshoot to the point, but I also wondered, like, I would assume or venture to guess too, like there's probably the element with your mom too, and like I felt this way, especially earlier on in my career, and it's still kind of like a muscle that I'm flexing. Is um the statistics for females asking for more money and compensation and pushing back on offers is significantly less than males if we're just talking about gender and just marginalized groups in gender in general. I think asking for more um, is not a muscle that's as strong in more like dominant groups based on the environment that you're in. So I'm sure that that's an element of it as well. But I'm also, as you were talking, I was thinking about too, I feel like the development of technology and social media also has played such a huge role in the younger generations that we see today, their visibility, access, and awareness to what's out there. So I think if we're talking about older generations, there was much less of that, much less developed technology that provided you more awareness, visibility, and access to what other companies were doing out there and what was out there and connecting with people to get jobs. I think that component has played a big factor in if we're talking about the generational norms and how they've shifted and evolved with younger generations. I think now it's like you can easily see what else is out there. You can easily see, in 2 seconds, I can go and research like the perks. Like I looked at some of the top companies, for example. I don't remember the exact inner workings of the program, but Disney has a program where they um, fully cover education. I know a lot of companies have benefits where they will provide some sort of supplement or stipend for education that benefits the individual's position. Yes, to be signed off on, but it looked like at Disney specifically, I've never worked there before, but at Disney, that it was like a fully covered. I'm sure there's some stipulations to that, but a fully covered educational offerings. So, um, 20 years, or let's say like 40 years ago, there may not have been the technology out there for people to have necessarily the awareness or understanding that things like that were out there. So I feel like technology and social media have also played a big part in the generational norms of how workplace perks are viewed and expected in the job search.
Yeah, I mean, I think Glassdoor was that pioneer that like
Mm-hmm.
they changed the game, right? And and if you ever hear a company say don't believe what you read on Glassdoor, you got to pause and think about it. And mind you, they're not
There's
fully wrong
disgruntled people out there. I get
for
it.
sure.
But yeah.
Don't I mean I wouldn't like even if I knew there was a lot of stuff on Glassdoor that wasn't legit, like I wouldn't say it out loud just because I've had recruiters be like, listen, just don't believe the Glassdoor, and I'm like, that's a red flag. But now there's Blind. It's a new company. It's a new
There's so
app.
many out there.
There's so many. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yelp reviews.
Yeah, or even for me, I love Reddit. Actually, if I'm being honest,
Mm.
and Reddit's not sponsoring this, but they're my favorite place to do research. Reddit and YouTube are probably my favorite place to do any kind of research now. Not as
I am not a Reddit individual, but a previous boss of mine told me I needed to embrace Reddit so I could better understand the acronyms that he was utilizing.
I Reddit is I love I'm pretty sure that he was using TL what is it TLDR, too long didn't
Oh
read. I
yeah,
have a lot of
I
people
knew that
respond to
one.
emails. People respond to emails with that. But
Bold.
yeah. But no, but you're absolutely, but that's the thing where it comes down to, because people didn't know, certain perks were used very I don't want to say prejudicially, but they were used like for certain people. It's like, oh, I like him, I'm going to pay for his schooling. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, I'm going to invest in you so you come work for my, but it wasn't for everyone, right? And it was for, and earlier what you said about about like gender and stuff, and absolutely, my mom is a immigrant female in the United States, right? So there's you have she's a person of color, she's an immigrant, and she's a woman, right? So she has, but my dad has a similar fears where like back, and not anymore because like I think they've seen me negotiate, and they've appreciated that I'm not gonna get fired or lose my job or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad, yeah, I was like, Dad, I'm gonna ask for a raise because XYZ, and he was like, No, you're good, you're making good money. What do you need a raise for? I was like, Ma, Dad, I'm underpaid by like X amount.
Yeah.
But because it's out there now, and even if we look generally, if you think about it, there's an episode of The Office, it's really funny, where Michael Scott finds out that he's underpaid and he's getting paid less than, like, his team can't get raises because he's so underpaid. um
Mm-hmm.
but he had no way of knowing that, right? Because he doesn't know. But for us, if back when you were an agency, if someone came up to you and just asked you off the bat, like, oh, what does a Java developer make? I mean, from my memory, 5 to 7 years ago, it was like $50 an hour. But I knew that, and everyone knew that.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knew that, right? And everyone knows. So these numbers aren't like surprises. I think that's the beauty of today. And now even better, New York has that whole pay
Mm-hmm.
transparency, and so does California, has it coming out, Washington. And that question will never happen again. Before, I remember people used to come up to me, oh, you're a recruiter, can you tell me what my value is? Like, how much should I ask for?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I used to feel bad because, like, then you find out that these people are getting like underpaid by like tens of thousands of dollars. I had this lady,
Mm-hmm.
um, she was a consultant for SAP for their for accounting, and she was like, yeah, I'm making like $80 an hour. I was like, what? You can literally make twice what you're making. Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, she's making 80,000, and I was like, you can make
Okay.
twice
I
what you're
was
making.
like,
Yeah,
holy
yeah,
shit.
yeah.
I
No,
picked
no.
the wrong profession, but I also hate accounting.
Oh, SAP candidates, consultants back in the day used to make so much money. They probably still do. I'm out of touch with SAP right now. Um, but yeah, I think technology has done a great thing. But at the same time, I think one of the negatives, though, that I see or have seen from some job seekers in the past is a little bit of entitlement,
Mm-hmm.
which I think that's the negative side of it, where you're like, I should get X because, blah, blah, or like your job posting says max rate of this, or this max salary of this. That's how much I want to make because that's what I deserve. I think that's a little, I think there should always be room for a little humility, a little negotiation. So I think you should ask for what you're worth, but also understand that, like, you're not always going to get what you want.
Oh yeah, for sure. I honestly tell people ask for more. Like asking can't or shouldn't hurt you. Like ask for the moon and then also know where you're willing to accept. Um
Absolutely.
yeah, I totally agree. One other topic that we touched on a little bit too, how do you feel like the evolution of supply and demand in the tech industry has affected, if at all, workplace perks?
Huh. So that's interesting because I think globalization, so workplace perks aside, I think just like jobs in America, I think like because now some companies are thinking, oh, like we don't need engineers onshore, we can go offshore or near shore. Um, I think for a time that kind of cut the amount of perks or the amount of benefits, whatever companies
Mm,
were willing to give. But then a couple of things happened. One is I think the demand skyrocketed, and so to the point where even if you have people in offshore, um, you're still in a position where you need people onshore, and
mm-hmm.
there are more companies now than there were before. There are more positions, so it was like kind of like uh, like a pendulum that kind of swung one way. But even though these things are happening, you're still needing more. So I don't think it's in today's day and age. I don't think it's affected the perks as much in a negative way. But that's actually a good question. I'm trying to think if what the effects, because I think there were effects, but I don't think that's the case anymore. If that makes sense.
Mm. I would say for like answering my own question, I feel like the impact and effect is constantly evolving just based on the market. Like obviously we're seeing right now a little bit of our industry, a lot of companies are going through layoffs and have significantly reduced or slowed down hiring. Um, so in those instances, a lot of times again, it's like the power swinging a little bit back more on the side of the employer. So then perhaps they could be altering and not offering as much, thinking that the supply is now higher than the demand, or that number and value is shifting a little bit. um I think I think it just, there's so many different factors that come into play, I think, with the evolution of workplace perks, whether it be the cultural evolution of generations, or supply and demand, or um, competition and market. I think there's so many factors that come into play. I think um, from the perspective of a candidate and an employee, um, the workplace perks are obviously like awesome outside of just like historically a standard compensation package with salary, like things we talked about previously, salary, um, bonus, annual bonus, equity, and what have you. Outside of that, like having the perks like being able to work remote, or free food, or mat leave, or um free movie screenings on site at our office, like all those things like add value to me for sure. But it's interesting to see, like I said, that the evolution over the years, and I'll be curious to see how, like 10 years from now, what are we going to be looking at in terms of workplace perks?
Do you think that the change in supply and demand, do you think that causes a change in the perks? Oh, in the sense like, do you think that causes them cutting perks, or do you think that changes, because I know like obviously that also affects how often they hire and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
what can you off the top of your head think of like perks that get taken away, not by one company but
Yeah,
maybe like
I
industry
don't
wide?
I don't think so. I feel like as a norm, companies historically have not backtracked based on supply and demand. Um, I feel like we haven't seen too often where, like I said, perks have been reduced because of that. I think it's only just been like what's added, or perhaps there was a reason where like financially they couldn't support a benefits package anymore, or um, like free food on site was removed because of the pandemic. Like factors come into play like that where they're removed or changed, but I don't think I don't think a higher supply with a decreased demand has been the cause of companies. Like maybe there's some out there that has happened, but I don't think as a industry norm that has been the catalyst for change.
Yeah, I hope free food comes back as a norm because, like you said, actually like that's a big one. It really is
Yeah.
for me. It probably like you said $40 a day, right?
Minimum for 2
Yeah,
meals in
yeah,
LA.
no, yeah. And if you think about like $40 a day, that's a lot of money. Like,
Yeah. That
oh,
adds up quick.
yeah. So with that, I'm actually going to ask you, and I don't know if it's too early, but I don't care because I want to ask you, what are your top 5 perks and benefits? So you can mix and match. What is your top 5 in order? No ties.
I'm gonna have to like write this out so I can like
Oh,
analyze it and think about it, but I'll try not take too long. Top
it's all
5,
good.
so including comp,
Everything. Yeah,
benefits.
but you can only pick
Like,
5.
can I say like comp package is one thing, or do I have to get granular with like base salary?
I think we'll make comp package one thing.
What are my
But
rules?
yeah, we'll make comp packages one thing.
Okay, so I'll do comp package is number 1. Am I doing, sorry, I'm the kind of person that asks, I need to know my parameters here. Am I doing factors in choosing a job, or am I solely looking at
Um,
benefits and perks?
it's just what's important to you. I don't want to like we're not comparing and contrasting. It's just what so I'll get
Okay.
so I'll let you think about that. As you're doing that, I'm gonna read a few stats if that's cool. So I'll let you
Okay.
I'll let you type it out.
This is good.
So yeah. So types of flexibilities that tech workers want. This is from Indeed. Okay.
Mhm.
So 58% of people wanted their top thing was flexible work hours.
Mhm.
Okay. 24% of people wanted work from home. Okay. So I guess it means like some work from home because the next one is remote work coming in at 14.4%. So I think they just want fully remote. And then 2.6 said none of these. All right. Another one I'll jump to says tech workers top benefits and perks. So 32% wanted employee development program and tuition reimbursement. That was their number one top benefit or perk, which is very
Hmm.
interesting to me for tech workers. Number 2 is health and wellness program, which I get. Healthcare is important. Number 3 is volunteer or corporate social responsibility program. Number the next one is pet friendly office, which I totally get. And you had some concerns about that if you want to mention them later. And the last
Mhm.
one was none of these, which is 7.5%. And pet friendly was 11.6%. But I find that interesting that employee development program was their number one, but I'm assuming that some of the things that we're calling perks, these people might assume as benefits,
Mm.
right? I'm guessing because I feel like PTO, I guess, can come under benefits
Mhm.
if they're not thinking of that. And then the last one, as you're wrapping up your thing, the last one that I'll bring up is what tech workers would take pay cuts for. Okay,
Mm.
and I find this very interesting. Um, hang on, let me just do. Okay, here we go. Career advancement is the number one. Okay, workplace flexibility is number 2. Shorter commute is number 3. Free food is number 4. Um, okay, I can't make out. Oh, so okay. Better culture fit is number 5. Ethical responsibility
Hmm.
for the company is number
Hmm.
6, and then volunteer opportunity is number 7.
Hmm.
But interesting, and I think you also had a comment about the whole career advancement taking a pay cut as well. Do you remember what you said?
No, I don't.
I agreed with it. That like if you're gonna like get a position that's like higher up, you should get paid more, not take a pay cut.
Oh, yeah. I
Right.
think for me it's just like from that my viewpoint I was just talking about like 100%. I understand like if I'm completely shifting
Yeah.
skill sets to where like market rates are lower in the new role that I'm moving into than what I was at previously. Like I
You're
totally get
pivoting.
that.
Yeah.
Yep, I get that for pivots. My viewpoint was like if I'm like where I was like, hell no, I wouldn't do that is if there may be other factors where I would, but as a general response to me taking an opportunity at another company that was still in line with my current career track and they were trying to offer me less money. Nope.
Yep. No, I agree.
Pass. Not happening.
I absolutely
Unless
agree.
there were some other factors that were important to me that outweighed comp. But okay, I did two things. I didn't fully listen to your rules for this. I did my top 4 factors in assessing a job for me personally. And then I did my top 4 perks.
Okay.
Which with more time, I would fully probably change this, but in the short amount of time, me giving you a response. So my top 4 in assessing a job, comp package is number 1. It's my number 1 driver for sure, but it can flex based on a number of things. 2 is work flexibility. So with that, I would say the flexibility of on-site versus off-site, and also the flexibility of time. Like right now, like I'm available during core work hours. I'm typically working during core work hours, but like if I have an appointment, like my boss doesn't care if I schedule an appointment in the late afternoon and step away and then come back. Like as long as my work's done and my partners are happy, like we're good. 3, I would say direct manager. I forget the study I had read previously, but it was like your direct manager is the number 1 reason why people leave or stay in their current job. It has such a big impact on your day-to-day, your growth, your development, like how you're feeling, so many factors. And then 4, culture, which is all encompassing. And I could go down so many specific rabbit holes there. So those are my top 4 for job assessment.
Mhm.
And then my top 4 perks were free food, wellness benefits, career development, and leave. And leave, I would probably all encompass around like, there's so many factors that come into play there, whether it's like Matt and Pat leave or caretaker leave, or so many different things that I would include in that bucket. But those 4 elements I would say for perks.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, you definitely didn't listen to my instructions, but I love it. It was
Do
very
you have a
insightful.
response? What's your answer to your original question?
So I didn't do the thing, but I'll see. Okay, so no one can hold me to this because I'm doing this on the spot.
Mhm.
Compensation, and I'm gonna do like a mix of both. So compensation, leadership. So that's my boss, but also like company leadership.
Mm.
That whole thing matters to me. Like you just said, and I didn't realize how important this was to me until fairly recently. But like, I'd love to work for people that I can learn from,
Mhm.
and people that like that I can really learn from. And it's a weird, because obviously it's like, oh, of course you learn from your boss, but it's like there's a difference between just having a boss and having someone that's teaching you stuff that you're going to use. So that's 1. So that's 2. Number 3 would be autonomy. So that covers all of flexibility, all of everything. For me is like, can I do my job well? And are you letting me do it my way? And then not majoring in the minors, right? Because there's people out there that really like to
majoring in the minors.
Yeah. See, I had a old mentor
Tagline that one.
tell me that. Yeah, no, we'll make t-shirts. But no, because if what they said to me was, if you major in the minors, you'll never make it in the majors, right? So not saying certain things aren't important. There are many small things that should be kept, and I should be kept on, but that shouldn't be all you keep an eye on. Like if someone is overperforming, but they have like one thing that they're missing here and there, you should speak to them about it, but there's a way to do it, right? You don't just like, anyway. So that's number 3. And then after that, so compensation, leadership, autonomy, culture. That's my top 4. I think if I was going to pick a 5th, it would probably be something like, oh no. And then I'll say like PTO or like leave. That'll be my 5th. But I think autonomy comes into that too. Well, I mean, leave isn't like a autonomy thing, but it kind of is. Cause I remember I had a boss fairly recently, and she was like, I don't care if you show up at 10 o'clock. I don't care if you have to take the rest of the day off. If it's like really long leave, let me know. But if you're like here and there, but you're getting your job done and everyone's on your team is fine, I don't care, right?
Mhm.
Because it doesn't affect the bottom line. It doesn't affect anything, essentially,
Mhm.
right? So yeah, so I think that's my top 5.
Love it. Cool. Um, so wrapping up the conversation today with takeaways from everything we've discussed, what are, let's say, 2 takeaways you would leave from an employer perspective and 2 takeaways you'd leave with from an employee or potential candidate perspective?
So I think the employer's perspective is a very simple one. It's I would be very much what I would say to employers is listen to the market and know yourself, right? When I say listen to the market, that's not just the market. It's also your current employees. It's everyone, right? Um, perks, whether it be perks, whether it be benefits. One is you should know what column what falls under. Like, don't put a bonus under perk. It's not a perk. That is part of the benefits, right? So know that, but then also know yourself. There's a very, we're not saying everyone needs to pay above market rate or pay crazy amounts of money. Your budgets are your budgets, and we respect and understand that. But you need to also respect and understand when your budgets aren't at that level, then there's a lot of other things that won't cost you a dime or will cost you significantly less to figure out, right? That's probably my top 2. And for candidates or for the workforce, really understand what's important to you. Going in and understanding, and also like one of the powerful things about like stack leveling the things that are important to you, if you're missing out on your number 1 but your 3 and 4 are much more than what you're hoping for, maybe it balances out. Find out what those are for you. And then, like, I think it also comes down to knowing like you're not made for every company's not made for you. So like, don't try to put a square peg in a round hole, like, see what makes sense for you. That would be for me. What about you?
I agree with all of your answers. I think from the company viewpoint, it's like as core behaviors, it's extremely important to understand current state of the market and then have a very strong self-awareness around your own organization, and then being able to cultivate a strategy based on that and highlight what makes you different and what's going to make you stand out and build your brand. And then from the employee perspective, I will also acknowledge, in addition to what you said, some individuals oftentimes don't have the luxury or privilege of being able to be as particular or bold about their priorities and what they're looking for. But I will say, in line with what you were sharing, especially I think for individuals earlier in their career, I think it's so easy. Um, there's so many factors that come into your lack of experience or understanding your awareness or confidence in your skill to where you will maybe not um not be as bold about what you want or what you're looking for. But I think interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you throughout the process and doing your due diligence, and comparing how they align with your top 5 and what's important to you, is really important in making sure it aligns with who you are and what you're looking for.
I love that. And with that being said, how about for everyone listening, if you can comment your top 5 benefits and perks, mix them up, tell us what they are, and then maybe we can take that data and maybe do another episode and be like, this is actually what the people want, because I don't think we actually answered that question. Well, no, we did. It's money. People want to get paid, so everyone pay your people. No, I'm just kidding. Do what's right for you and your company. I think that's the bottom line. Find out what that is and do it. Cool. So I guess that's wrapping up. I guess we want to thank everybody for listening. And yeah, so it's been sincerely Fran and Shubho.